It's great to be back with you to do this again on Amogate Radio Communications. The program is Dimensions in the Geopolitical Economy, and your host is Abiodun Abari. Welcome and thanks for joining me. Now, the singular individual in the world who was exerted the most influence on the geopolitical economy in the past 2 weeks has got to be Donald Trump, implementing his America First policy, an agenda he ran on, an agenda the voters endorsed by putting him in office, and helping the Republican Party to the trifecta. Okay, and we examine his comments on the Panama Canal, maybe because of China's influence, and of course Greenland, discussion with Denmark, and his comments too regarding Ukraine's rare earth metals. Okay, and we look at his actions in bringing about the Israel-Hamas truce, and of course the ordering, or so to speak, the reform of the USAID. Okay, these are things that are actually helping shape the geopolitical economy in a very fast manner. Okay, we also look at his attempts to use tariffs, economic tariffs, to enhance border security, especially combating the infiltration of the border. I mean, with drugs, especially fentanyl, which originates from China, and accounts for a number of deaths, thousands of deaths monthly in the United States. Okay, so and Mexico, Canada, and China are being in the eye of the storm. After they were being threatened with tariffs, I think Mexico reneged and put 10,000 National Guard troops on the border, and Canada too is actually playing ball with Mr. Trump, and I think Xi Jinping, China's leader, will be having a phone call with Donald Trump if it's going to be possible to avoid a trade war, which between China and the United States. We have ramifications for global trade. Talking about Donald Trump's comments about Ukraine, he has explicitly called for a guarantee for Washington by Ukraine signing a new agreement to supply the United States with rare earth metals, rare earth minerals, in order to continue to receive United States assistance, military assistance. Okay, and according to a 2024 World Economic Forum report, Ukraine has the potential to be a major global supplier of critical raw materials essential for defense industry, the high-tech industry, and of course the clean renewable energy industry. Right. It has the largest titanium reserves in Europe, and 7% of the global reserves. Okay, and in fact, before the war began, Ukraine was a key supplier of titanium to the global military industries. Okay, and Ukraine also has the largest lithium reserves in Europe, about 500,000 tons in lithium reserves, and reckon that lithium is very important for making batteries and accumulators, very crucial, especially for EVs and making EV batteries. And so Ukraine, in the eye of the storm, and Donald Trump has straight shooting, as is accustomed to, explicitly calling for a guarantee for Washington by Ukraine signing a new agreement to supply the United States with rare earth metals in order to continue to receive United States military assistance, putting America first, you say, being unapologetic about it, talking about nickel, graphite, apatite, fluorite, uranium, zirconium, gallium, manganese, and of course beryllium, precious metals, important, crucial metals are important for industries across the board. So Trump even said that they were looking to do a deal with Ukraine, where they are going to secure what they are going to give to them with the rare earths and other things. Okay, so you know that the United States Congress has actually authorized about $175 billion for Ukraine. Okay, so it's about Mr. Trump looking at what's in it directly for the United States if the funding has to continue. Okay, reviewing the situation and trying to put American first. But of course, a NATO ally, Germany's Olaf Scholz, chided Mr. Trump, calling him selfish. You know, that the action very, very selfish, very self-centered. I mean, to use Ukraine's resources to finance defense support. That's a very selfish move and self-centered move. And I think that's just typical of putting oneself first, which Donald Trump ran on and is trying to implement. Okay, so but Germany's Olaf Scholz actually advised that profits from rare earth metals should be devoted to the reconstruction of Ukraine. You reckon that Ukraine has undergone a massive destruction as a result of the conflict with Russia, and because of the level of destruction, that a lot of funds will be needed for the reconstruction. So such funds from the rare earth metals should actually be channeled towards the reconstruction of Ukraine. And Ukraine's leader Zelensky, in his victory plan, talks about the special agreement with United States and the Western allies, joint protection of critical resources, joint investments, and the use of corresponding economic potential. And recall that last November, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, talked about the Ukraine war has been a struggle for resources by the West. You know, he was trying to justify Russia's position about caring about the people, but the United States for the resources. Okay, and talking about USAID, which has been a geopolitical tool for the United States, sort of a soft power agency meant to protect, promote, and advance United States interests by distributing billions of dollars yearly around the world for humanitarian purposes. In fact, the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, man who is the head of DOGE, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, the new department created by Donald Trump's administration to cut costs, has called the USAID a criminal organization, and that it's time for it to die. And that just shows the inner workings of the Trump administration and how they are thinking about USAID in the face of implementing the America First agenda, talking about reforming the USAID, okay, putting it under the purview of the State Department and ensuring that, yes, Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, is the acting administrator of the USAID, okay, and he is of the insistence that they need to take policy direction from the United States Secretary of State, from the National Security Council, from the White House, from structures of government, all right, and but rather the USAID has morphed into a global charity, and which is devoid of United States influence, okay, even though it's being financed by the US taxpayers' money, but is not accountable to the United States government's structures, not accountable to the White House, not accountable to the Secretary of State, not taking policy directives from authorities, all right, but actually pursuing a global agenda. And he further asserted that national interest, which is meant to be paramount, has not been considered, and that the USAID has not been cooperative with embassies and missions around the world, and they actually undermine the work of the state departments working at cross purposes at times. That they even go to the extent of supporting programs that upset host governments. The State Department is trying to work with host governments that the state government is cooperating with. The USAID sponsor programs that actually undermine such governments, and this actually shows that USAID at times works at cross purposes with the State Department. So the USAID being unresponsive, thinking of itself as a global entity and not working for the United States, all right? And if that is against the statute, it's not sustainable, okay? Because of course, the administration will want foreign aid to align with U.S. interests, okay? And USAID with $40 billion in foreign aid and completely uncooperative. I mean, as alleged, not answering questions. I mean, and still pushing through payments even after the signing of the executive order. Okay, I mean, there were still, so these are reports that came, and when you look at it, you want to say maybe globalists have actually hijacked the USAID or whatever, or what other explanation we want advance for that kind of disposition. I mean, the USAID not actually advancing America's interest, okay? And that might not be surprising because even you have administrations adopting policies like an open border policy that actually undermines the strength and security of the United States. And just look at whose agenda is actually advanced with an open border. Definitely that should be globalists who want sovereignties compromised, who want of course a borderless world, and want maybe the United Nations to usurp all sovereignties around the world, and we have subservient nations as it were to one global government. Okay, those are just our positions anyway, and of course with Mr. Trump coming in, is trying to reshape the direction of the United States. I mean, redirects policy in the United States and ensure that the United States reaps full benefits of its endeavors in charity. That its charity, its regime aligns with its interests, that actually protects, promotes, and advances United States interests. And Marco Rubio, Secretary Marco Rubio, has asserted that the United States will still be the most generous nation on earth, but in a way that protects the interests of the United States. Okay, that makes America safer and more prosperous. That the United States is not a global charity, and global charities can raise money and spend anyhow they want to, but taxpayers' money must be spent to protect, promote, and advance the interests of the United States and its citizens. Okay, so he has asserted that since the USAID has currently constituted, has refused to provide access or information and become very insubordinate, right? And even refused to grant access to Congress, that it was necessary to wield the big stick. And concerns of China filling in the gap and gaining these influences across the border should be secondary as far as it's concerned, as long as United States national interests are protected, promoted, and advanced. Right? That no matter what China does, that it makes no sense being involved with things that undermine America, that China's reaction should not be a factor when it comes to protecting, promoting, advancing, and ensuring that in the activities of the United States that concerns foreign aid aligns with its interests. And last year, about more than 40% of the United Nations humanitarian budgets was funded by the United States, being the largest donor globally. Okay, and with it's now frozen for 90 days, except emergency food programs, military aid to Israel and Egypt. All right, you have sectors affected across the board, from health to education, security and conflict and so on. So look at the global impact, especially when you see that the United States gave up aid of about $72 billion in 2023 in nearly 180 countries. All right, so you see how this freeze will affect access to clean water, access to health care, all right, access to food, all right. So, and of course, Marco Rubio later signed a waiver exempting life-saving humanitarian assistance from the freeze, and not a few people have found this ambiguous, that what actually constitutes life-saving humanitarian assistance. Okay, and without missing words, that will not apply to abortions or family planning programs, family planning procedures that, of course, run contrary to the values of the Conservative Party, of the GOP. Okay, and even in Ukraine, humanitarian services have been discounted, have been cut. Right, and even the veteran up to has been affected. Okay, with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling for additional exemptions to be issued, to be able to reduce the effects of the freeze, especially in critical sectors, in critical areas that need urgent attention. But of course, some may see this crisis as an opportunity to look inward and find homegrown solutions for the benefit of the citizenry, especially where leadership is available, especially where leadership is effective, leadership is efficient, especially when leadership knows what its honors are. Okay, so this crisis should be seen as an opportunity to look inward, alright, and find homegrown solutions, win itself of the dependency on foreign aid, and for the benefits of the citizen. I mean, not a doubt, the AIDS freeze sent shockwaves around the world, especially in Africa. Africa depends on foreign aid a lot, right? And we have programs there being affected. A program like PEPFAR that is not well known, but supports over 20 million people living with HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis on the African continent, and another program like FuseNet, okay, which is of course the farming early warning system, okay, which detects where there are food insecurities, all right, so that donors can come in. I mean, they rely on real-time data, all right. I think it was established after the 83 to 85 famine in Ethiopia. I mean, that came on board then. So, and look at the current famine in parts of Sudan will also be aggravated. Okay, looking at the impacts of the AIDS freeze, on the geopolitical economy. I mean, countries need to step up to the plate to fill the vacuum. They cannot afford to kick the can down the road any longer, because there's no more charity, there's no more free lunch. And on the flip side, countries are no longer beholden to carrying water for the United States when it comes to international affairs, so they can do what they want since they are not dependent on foreign aid. When Yoruba say that so if they're not going to be depending on foreign anymore, they might not be voting the way the United States wants, or trying to align with United States interest when it comes to international affairs. I mean, the effects of the 8 trees, it's something that's devastated in some areas. Look at some areas that are very vulnerable, like in Myanmar, cutting off aid to one of the most very vulnerable places in the world. Okay, I mean, devastating, experiencing violence. I mean, from the 4-year-old military regime. Okay, I mean, and the ability to document the human rights abuses allegedly perpetrated by the military regime is also hampered. So securing accountability and ending impunity is somewhat far-fetched. Right? So, and of course, they will be needing to let go of medical professionals attending to the most vulnerable groups who are escaping the violence, and living in dire circumstances. We're talking about some 3.5 million people displaced and some 18 million people in need of food assistance, food emergency. Okay, who have no other options for food, for water, and medicine, and at the risk of disease breakout and deaths. So, of course, I might not be able to just fold their arms. There's a need to explore other options, like other larger countries, like China, Canada, the EU, United Kingdom, and large organizations and individuals who are philanthropists and have the funds, okay, and the hearts too. And you also look at the effects of ending disease surveillance, even on the U.S., halting the monitoring of Ebola in Uganda. Okay, so even if there's any breakout or any information that is necessary, the body for disease control in Uganda will not be sharing information with the CDC in the United States. Okay, so, and of course that also exposing U.S. citizens too, and halting the monitoring of avian flu in about 47 countries around the world. And of course the halting PEPFAR, as I said earlier, impacting the fight against the scourge of HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis, and halting that's malaria and TB surveillance in the United States. Okay, so the purge of USAID's leadership, the ball has been actually set rolling in the direction that the Trump administration wants to go. And in the underdevelopment, talking about Panama, when Trump talked about going to take the canal or something very powerful, what's going to happen? United States actually handed over the canal in a treaty to Panama, all right, and having China now dominating 20 years later is something that the Trump administration is not happy about. All right, you have Chinese-linked companies on the two sides to the entry ports, to the entry points of the canal. All right, so Chinese presence in the canal area, and Panama writ large. Something that the Trump administration finds disturbing, concerning, unacceptable. Okay, and with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is an anti-China hawk, that he will just make sure that the foot is perpetually on the gas. So they see it as a violation of the treaty. Okay, that the canal wasn't given to China, and there is a preliminary determination that a third sovereign country has control over the canal area, talking of China, and the United States has preserves the rights under the treaty, okay, to address his concerns. Alright, so no need for speculations, and conversations are ongoing and Panama itself has taken some steps, significantly getting out of the Belt and Road Initiative is a significant step. I mean, Panama opting out and trying to be in the good books of the United States. Okay, so a private company actually runs the canal. So if there are going to be changes, the government we still need to go through some legal procedures to effect changes. So, of course, the United States, this administration wants to return the canal to U.S.-Panama partnership where no foreign powers or their companies exert influence. They want to guard against potential use against the U.S. in case of any future conflict. Okay, so the baseline for the administration is we cannot accept the Chinese exerting effective control on the canal area through their companies. And his action against Canada being a strong ally, a very, very good neighbor of the United States. I mean, the tariffs on Canadian goods impacting the economic relationship. So the Trump administration finds that there's an unfair economic relationship with Canada. There's an imbalance of trade. The regulations are not reciprocity and reciprocal rather than reciprocal, and even the United States banks cannot operate in Canada. That Canada protects its own industries. That there's a need for a reset. Okay, and apart from that, Canada has been less than cooperative on the northern border on the fight against the scourge of fentanyl. And in fact, October last year, a big fentanyl lab was found inside Canada. Fentanyl is dangerous and accounts for deaths, thousands of deaths of Americans. So something that the administration is really fighting against. And look at Mexico too. You have much of northern Mexico being controlled by cartels. But Mexico has agreed to put 10,000 National Guard troops on their border. So you have the tariffs being delayed. Okay, Canada too, playing ball. Tariffs being delayed, and Mexico too. Okay, because the thinking of the Trump administration is that America has been taken advantage of for too long across the board. Okay, that they just pour money into countries who turn around to vote against the U.S. as the United Nations, countries that support their enemies. Okay, and of course, nations should expect that their money, the money they receive from the United States, as the money is self-serving. The money is meant for them to pay by dancing to the tune of the United States, by carrying water for the United States. Okay, so on trade, countries whose companies can do what they want. The United States, the United States cannot reciprocate. I mean, in terms of regulations that they allow countries, that they allow their own companies to do what they want in the United States, that they don't have those countries reciprocating that gesture. So there's a shift towards reciprocity as a policy. So maybe even in terms of charges or access to markets or regulations, everything will be reciprocal. Okay, to ensure evenness, to ensure fairness. Okay, that's the United States might not like what China is doing, but China is acting in its own interest, so it cannot be blamed. Okay, so of course, with these shifts, cycles in Washington, editorial boardrooms, we of course react. Also look at the trend, the Aragua deportations to Venezuela, and Maduro releasing American prisoners, or if you like, hostages, cooperating with the Trump administration. That will be interesting to watch. Is he looking for legitimacy? He's looking for recognition from the Trump administration. That's Maduro of Venezuela, and acceptance of foreign illegal immigrants, especially the criminals too. Okay, and we also look at what the El Salvador leader is doing. That's Nayib Armando Bukele Ortez, who has done a yeoman's job in the region and is now a leader, an expert at dealing with crime and gangs. He's able to turn around the society in El Salvador, making it safer. 5 or 6 years ago, you couldn't go out when it's half dark. The crime rate, criminal gangs, and the complete turnaround is something that's worth emulating. So he has even built jails for these camps, and is actually working with the Trump administration and accepting illegal immigrants, criminals that are not even from El Salvador. Putting them in jail in El Salvador. He didn't have a good relationship with the former President Biden, but I think he and the current administration are good buddies. Because then, for the turnaround, people had to pay protection money to gangs to avoid the cutting off of body parts by the gangs, ears, fingers, kidnapping, extortion, murder, and crime were the order of the day. And for Iran, the interest, of course, would be preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and stop funding proxies, militant proxies, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Palestine, and Hezbollah in Lebanon, and of course the militants in Iraq, as it were. So the interest of the Trump administration is for Iran to stop funding these proxies, okay, and also to stop trying to be the dominant force in the Middle East. All right, and the United States will want to reestablish deterrence in the region, of course. And for China, obviously, the future of the 21st century will likely be defined by the relationship between the United States and China. China is rich and powerful, and there's nothing the United States can do about that. China has come to stay. So it's more about trying to counter China's dominance on the continent, and reducing the dependency on China for critical products, for minerals, medicine, tech, the EV, telecommunication industry, and so on and so forth. The United States depends on China a lot, so there's a need for the United States to win itself of dependency on China. All right, so it's more about re-establishing balance rather than seeking to contain China. So the Trump administration's approach is to seek to re-establish balance rather than containing China. That's okay. It's China's destiny to be rich and powerful, but the balance must be established, especially by winning itself of dependency on China for critical products. Okay, China is a great country, great history. That the objectives is fairness and balancing, and dependency on China is not acceptable in the United States. And on these notes, we draw the context on today's episode. But please do remember that at Armagate, they're always ready to help and support organizations to work optimally, creating frameworks and processes for optimization of resources and attainment of goals. You can contact us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You can visit our website at www.thearmagate.org. Our email is contact@thearmagate.org. I hope that the time we spent together has been rewarding, and I can affirm from my own end that it's been my pleasure hosting you. Until I come up on your devices again, it's bye for now. Thank you.